Hello everybody! Today I'm going to show you how I turned this old blanket into a coat. That's today on Refashioning with Rachel. I thrifted this blanket and it had a few holes in it, but plenty of it was still very salvageable. So I decided to make it into a coat. I used a hoodie for my pattern. I folded it in half and lined up the fold in the hoodie with a fold in the blanket, leaving a few inches of extra length on the blanket. And then I traced around my hoodie, adding 1 centimeter for seam allowance. I made a straight line starting at the shoulder seam, going all the way up to the center back, which might sound weird, but just go with me. This is going to add a bit of a collar. And then I had my back piece cut out. I used the back piece as a pattern for my 2 front pieces, making sure to avoid the holes on the blanket. And then I had my 2 front pieces. Again, using my hoodie as a pattern, I traced around the sleeve, adding 1 inch at the cuff and a centimeter around the rest of the sleeve. And I cut that out. I used that sleeve as a pattern to cut out another sleeve, and unfortunately I could not avoid this hole. To fix this hole, I stitched it up with a needle and thread. Basically, I was just weaving the thread in and out of all the fibers, creating like a net or like a web to just hold everything together. And after a little bit of back and forth, the hole was effectively mended and I could continue. So with right sides facing, I put the front 2 pieces on top of the back piece and pinned and sewed the shoulder seams. When I got to the neck, I just curved around that point. And I trimmed off and rounded out that point. I cut out a bunch of 2.5 inch binding strips out of some scrap fabric. I used this to bind all of my seams. With the right side of the binding strip facing the seam and lining up the raw edges, I sewed the strip to the seam. Then, working on the other side, I folded in the raw edge of the strip and folded it around the seam, going just past the stitching line, and I sewed down the binding strip, making the stitch very close to the fold. And now my seams are nicely encased in this binding strip. To attach the sleeves, I first pinned the center of the sleeve to the shoulder seam with right sides facing, and then working my way from each end of the armhole toward the shoulder seam, I pinned the sleeve to the armhole. And I did the same thing on the other side, and then sewed that seam. and I used some more binding strips to encase all of those seams. With the sleeves attached, I folded the whole project with right sides facing and pinned the side seams and the underarm seams. In the armpit area, I folded the seams in opposite directions to reduce the bulk. And at this point, I was getting a little lazy, so I attached the binding strip at the same time as I sewed the side seams. I just made sure that all 3 of the raw edges were all lined up. When I got to the bottom of the coat, I trimmed off the excess length of the strip and folded it up and sewed it down. This made a clean finish when I sewed the strip down on the other side. I finished off the edges of the opening of the coat with some more binding, starting on the wrong side of the coat and folding up the strips on the ends. And finishing sewing the binding on the right side of the coat. I trimmed the sleeves to my desired length and added some binding, again starting on the wrong side of the coat. And finishing on the right side of the coat. And after the cuffs had binding, this project was finished. So here's a reminder of how this blanket looked before. And here is what it looks like now. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe if you did, and have a beautiful day.